again this evening, all joining us. It is indeed our pleasure to be afforded this opportunity to host a seminar such as this. We all agree that this seminar is timely. We see and hear stories daily, people unable to resolve disagreements or conflicts peacefully. And we know that the only result or the net result is grief. But in Colossians 3 verse 13, we read, "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." When we see the grief that happens after all these conflicts, we ask ourselves, how did it get this far? Well, this evening, with the help of our presenter, we will seek to explore the ways in which we can resolve conflicts before they get to the point of no return. I will now ask Deacon Michelle Grant to introduce our presenter this evening. Then we will listen to a song on conflict resolution immediately after the introduction of our presenter. Sister Michelle.
Thank you, Brother Lance. Good evening, everyone. Crystal Gail O'Neill is a PhD candidate in the Global Governance and Human Security Program at the Department of Conflict Resolution, Human Security and Global Governance at the University of Massachusetts, Boston's McCormack Graduate School. She's also an Adam Smith and Dan Lavoie Fellow at the Mercator Center, George Mason University. Her tertiary studies began at UTech, University of Technology, where she completed a bachelor's in education in business and computer studies. Her research interests include gender and sexuality, post-colonization in Latin America and the Caribbean, intra-group dialogues, and restorative and social justice practices. She has taught classes around race, gender and sexuality, global gender politics, global politics and navigating cross-cultural dialogues at University of Massachusetts, Boston, and Babson College. She is a member of the Gregory Park Baptist Church.
When we get in a fight, we each think we are right. We have to sort it out and find a way to listen to each other, understand one another. We can work together to make it okay. I need to tell you how I feel, you need to tell me how you feel. Then we'll take a walk in one another's shoes. We gotta can't solve a problem when you're so upset. Step 2, talk and listen to the opposition. What do they want? What do you want? Take a walk in each other's shoes. Understand what the other has to lose. Step 3, compromise. It's give and take. We each give a little for the other's sake. And at the end of the day, we can walk away knowing that we solved the problem peacefully, so we can live in harmony.
So with that said, and a beautiful song that outlines the whole conflict resolution issues, we turn over to our presenter this evening, Sister O'Neill. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that beautiful welcome. And as I was listening to the song, I kept thinking, well, the presentation is over, because that song basically told us exactly how we should get along and what we need to do in terms of conflict. But I'm pretty sure you didn't just come for that one little song. So I'm hopefully going to present some skills for your toolkit, for your conflict resolution toolkit today. All right, so I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you now. And just to give you an overview of how this is broken down, because I always feel it's good for people to get a blueprint of where we're going so that you know there is a purpose and a method to what we're doing. So first, we're going to break down what is conflict resolution. I'm going to share with you some things that the Bible says about how we as Christians should approach conflict. Then we're going to go into the skill building piece of it with some conflict resolution techniques, focusing on 2 today: active listening and sharing using I statements. Then we're going to have the opportunity to practice, because it's one thing for you to hear, but there's another thing to do. So we're going to have a lot of practice times where we're going to go into breakout rooms and do a few things, come back and then debrief. And that will be the trajectory for our evening. Hopefully, at the end of this, you will have gained at least 1 to 2 skills in conflict resolution as we go. All right, so what is conflict resolution and why do we need to even think about it? Conflicts are defined as relational disputes between 2 or more parties, and the issues usually arise when 1 or 2 parties' needs aren't being met by the other party, and when the party's interest doesn't align. Conflict is inevitable. We're never, ever going to get away from conflict. I'm sorry to say it. This is why we need to know how to amicably resolve those conflicts when they come up. Wherever there's people, right, there's difference, and people are never going to see eye to eye. So the true skill is knowing how to actually be and to come out of those conflicts in, as the song says, harmony. So what is conflict resolution? Conflict resolution is a process to find peaceful solutions to disputes or disagreements between 2 or more parties. And that is what we're going to focus on, right? Not the part that, oh, we should have a peaceful world. We should, yes, but we know that is not possible right now. So until then, we're going to always constantly be building our toolkit of conflict resolution or resolving conflict. So what does the Bible say about how Christians should approach conflict? It gives us like literally the steps in which we should do and to talk about and to resolve conflict. You heard one from before from Colossians, and here are just a few more that tells us how we as Christians should actually navigate the world as people of God and as people who are the holders, right, of the peace process. We, as Matthew 5:9 says, are the peacemaker. Blessed are those who are peacemakers, because they will be called the children of God. And all of us, right, are in charge of and have the mantle to be peacemakers and peace holders of the process, so that our world that is often in turmoil will find amicable solutions. One of the verses that I want to highlight for us today is Matthew 18:15-17. And it says, if your brother sins against you and sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you will have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And what does that look like? Here's a visual of what that looks like. When someone causes you harm or hurt or offends you in any way, the first step is to humbly, empathetically, peacefully, lovingly, faithfully, what I term call the person in, not out, call them in lovingly, privately, one-on-one, just to say, here is this thing that occurred, here is this thing that caused harm, and I want to talk with you one-on-one about it. If the person is like, go away in the Jamaican term, and, goes away, then there's other option. If the person says, yes, I hear you, I understand, I recognize the harm that was caused, the Bible says you will have gained a brother or gained a friend or gained and maintained the relationship that was there. If it does happen that the person is like, no, left me alone, no bother with it, you can, as the Bible says, go with 1 or 2 witnesses, not to like confront the person and to like have a posse, but to just bear witness to you, sharing again with this person that harm was caused and you want to bring that to their attention. Like I said, these people are not your posse, they're just witness bearers to the fact that you have tried to approach this person in a humble and loving way to find a resolution. If those two don't work, then the Bible gives us another way to approach it, and that is to bring it to the church. And when I say bring it to the church, I mean to 1 or 2 or 3 people who are trained in mediation or conflict resolution, so that they can act as arbitrators or independent third parties in listening to both sides and coming to a solution. So the Bible does tell us how we should approach it. Do we do this? Not many times, because I know for a few people, when I say that the Bible gives us a blueprint on how to resolve conflict, and one of them is bringing it to the church, people always say, why am I bring my problem to church people? Them chat too much, or them this or that, right? And people don't want to do that for fear that privacy issues or whatever, or whatever is going on in the church. But it does let us know that here is the steps. Oftentimes, typically we get to privately one-on-one, and then it might not go the way we plan. And then we're like, oh, whatever, throw up our hands. Or the witnesses that we bring are witnesses there, not to be impartial, but to like help, escalate the conflict further. So one of the things that I like to do when I show this is to show people visually that, yes, we have a way that was put forth for us in the Bible on how we should bring conflict as people of God. So this takes me to the what, why, how, and who, right? And all of this comes together regarding like what we need, why we do it, how we do it, and who. So the first thing is what, right? What conflict techniques tell us about ourselves and helps us to do. Conflict techniques helps us to eliminate adversarial contests. It strives really for us to meet all parties where they're at. And in the song where it says, compromise, you have to give a little, right? That part where that means meeting people where they're at and meeting their needs, because as the definition for conflict says, it's when one party's need is not being met in a conflict. The conflict resolution techniques that we have, we need them because it helps us to promote empathy for the other person, expressing empathy with ourselves, and also helps us to collaboratively problem solve, right? Whenever we're in conflict, we are most times in a place of hurt. So we're not thinking, you know what, I need to, like, as the song says, calm down to eliminate adversarial contest. No, we're thinking, all right, what's the next move that I'm going to do to strike a blow? So the what of conflict resolution techniques, it is for us to eliminate adversarial conflicts and to meet people where they're at. The why. Why do we need these skills? We need these skills so that we can be good communicators. And I really love to lift the song, so I'll continue to like refer to it as well. It helps us to communicate, as it says in the song, in the first part of the song, stop, right? Stop. And listen, right? Think before responding, thinking, right? Pay attention to our body language, paying attention to how we deliver what we're doing and saying, and really communicate in an effective way. Why do we need conflict resolution skills? It helps us to have a level of emotional intelligence. And what does that mean? That we ourselves are exhibiting self-control, right? We're assessing our own emotions as well as the emotions of others and knowing how we're reacting to that without escalating the situation. Thinking about empathy and how we employ that to the person that we might be in a conflictual situation with. Looking at and seeing attitudes, both the positive ones and negative ones from ourselves and for the person who we might be in conflict with, and how we're playing off of that. And also helps us to be accountable to ourselves and also to hold others accountable. And all these things are operating all at once, right? You are checking in with yourself, right? And then also assessing what's going around you with the person who you might be in conflict with. Why we need this is because we need to all the time, this says depersonalize, and that just means separating the person from the behavior, recognizing that the person is human, right? And we're recognizing their humanity and recognizing that this behavior is not necessarily what we're going to use as the woke out the fat to fry them, right? This is just a behavior in a time that we can address to move on and to move the mantle on the relationship. When we depersonalize or separate the person from the behavior, we're able to do that by bringing the personal in, referring and talking about the incident using certain statements that we'll practice later, which are I statements, right? I statements allows us to not attribute blame, not to shame, right? And not to have people be defensive. It is meant as a tool to really de-escalate conflict when we focus on how issues that are that we're having during a conflict and bring it personal. Why we need conflict resolution skill? It helps us to creatively problem solve, to creatively come up with ways in which we can meet each other's needs as opposed to being adversarial. Like you say something bad to me, like I say back something bad to you, right? And sort of like continually be in this state of hurt, as opposed to thinking creatively how you can solve the issue, right? From a place of understanding, from a place of collaboration, and from a place of negotiating and navigating the needs that you have. The how. So each of us within our own bodies embody or have 5 of these conflict resolution styles with us, or strategies. These styles were developed by Thomas Kilmann, and it is the Thomas Kilmann Mode Instrument, or the TKI. Some of you who are leaders or in leadership positions who have probably done the Myers-Briggs or have done the TKI, you probably come across this before. But this TKI was developed by Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilmann, who are organizational psychologists and oftentimes created assessments for management and leadership styles, and helps people to navigate sort of like how to be in teams and to work collaboratively in teams. So each of us, right, have these 5 styles going on in our body. And these 5 styles are, and I'll just start from bottom up, from like quadrant up. So avoidance or withdrawal, competition or authoritative command, compromise, which is what we heard in the song, accommodation or soothing, collaboration or problem solving, right? Again, and I need to stress this, we have all 5 of these in our bodies. It is basically this grid or this model tells us how and we oftentimes operate, or where we feel comfortable when we're faced with conflict. So you could be an accommodator, You could be someone who compromises. You could be someone who avoids or withdraws, someone who is authoritative and commanding, or someone who is collaborative and problem solving. And all of them, right, are operating at the same time. And you can choose to deploy them at any point. Later on in this presentation, I'm going to share with you a link where you can actually take the quiz for yourself to find out which one you are. So that's something to look forward to you, that I'm going to share with you. You can take it to know. I've done this quiz multiple times because I love doing assessments. I love doing personal assessments because it teaches me something new about myself. Some people say like self-assessments are self-fulfilling prophecy, but I just love taking them because, you know, when I get the results, I'm always like, oh, this is interesting, or this don't make no sense, right? But I always like taking this one. And I can tell you, whenever I take this test, my top two are always collaboration or compromise. Those are always my top two. And like I said, the test actually ranks where you are in scale on all 5 of them. So my top two are always collaboration and compromise. My middle is accommodation. The next one that I usually get is avoidance. And then the last one is competition and authoritative. And here is why. I've always tried to be a collaborator or problem solver. Some research says it's because I'm the middle child, and middle child are usually the peacemakers. So I'm just going to go with that, that, you know, the collaborative part of me comes from my DNA because I'm a middle child. But I really, really, really like when I meet people where they're at and hear all their needs and try to meet them. I sort of like go between compromise and collaboration a lot. And that is because, like I said, like I am all about harmony, right? I am not conflict averse, right? Whenever a conflict arises, I'm always there trying to like collaborate and to problem solve around it. So I don't avoid conflict, but at the same time, whenever a conflict arises, I always think from, you know, how can we get the best solution for everybody in this place? And as you can see, avoidance, withdrawal means denying that conflict exists and hiding your true feelings. Some of you might be out there being like, oh, that sounds like me. Competition or authoritative, like you're forcing like your solution or your needs onto people, be like, yo, this is what I want and this is what we're going to do, right? If that's you, okay, good, more power to you. For the compromisers out there, you're willing to like give and take, as the song says, bargain, win some, lose some kind of a thing. If you're a accommodator or a soothing, you play down conflicts, right? Especially if like internally you're like, this don't sound so right. And then you do that to seek harmony among everybody else. And if you're a collaborator or problem solver, you're always searching and seeking for solutions that meet everybody's needs. So per the research, what folks oftentimes would like people to aspire to is to be collaborative and problem solvers. Because in this quadrant, it just shows that people are really getting in touch with everybody's needs and are willing to meet people where they're at. Not saying that that is like good all the time, but for in conflicts, especially in conflicts where you are trying to continue to maintain the relationship and to continue to maintain some civility with the person or groups you're in conflict with, this is oftentimes optimal. So now that takes us to the who, right? Who needs these skills? You and I and everybody in the world need these skills, right? And we as people, right, need to continually assess ourselves when it comes to conflict resolution. And as earlier, as we heard, that this world is in turmoil and has constantly been in turmoil, but as peacemakers and as people who will eventually, after this presentation, have 2 skills and tools in our toolkit for conflict resolution, we can further the mandate in being peacemakers. So today, 2 skills that I said you're going to be exposed to is 1, using I statements when you're sharing a conflict that has occurred and you're sharing that with someone or sharing an issue, and 2, listening actively. So You are the who. So if you're in a conflict and you want to tell somebody that, hey, you have offended me in some way, or I am hurt in some way, or whatever it is that is occurring has caused me harm or hurt, the go-to rule or the go-to formula is to use I statements. I statements are ways to share how you feel in a clear and, as the song said, calm down and respectful way. You're not casting judgment, you're not putting blame, you're not shaming, you're sharing how you're feeling in a clear and calm and respectful ways. These statements help us to focus on the behavior that the person is exhibiting or has exhibited and not on the person. Again, not casting judgments. These statements allow us to really communicate in a way that's effective and helps to diffuse situation and to help people feel less defensive. When it comes to the basic formula for an I statement, basic formula, it is oftentimes using words or feeling emotions to express how you feel. So in this case, you would say, I feel, insert emotion here, when you insert behavior here. So here I will share an example with you. One of my family members hates when any member of us does this, which is like just like randomly spitting out whatever might be in your mouth, whatever irritant is in your mouth. And that person is always like, stop spitting. And then we're all like, oh my God, okay, sorry, we will stop, right? So an example of how that family member can share using I statements can say, I feel annoyed when you spit, right? That is meant to like share that this issue that is annoying them, right? Is really causing some minimal harm, and they would like it to bring it to your attention. To bring it even further, the expanded formula of that is sharing with the person how you feel about the thing that they're doing, and share with them why, which is because, and then explain using please to say an action, right? So in this case, with my example, I feel annoyed when you spit because it's unsanitary. Can you please refrain from spitting so that we're not spreading germs around? See, right there, there's like logic, there's thinking. I am now thinking, oh yes, that might be unsanitary, right? So it is meant to diffuse the situation, to really show with the person, like, here is something that you're doing that is causing some harm, and here is why it's causing harm and why it might be a bit dangerous or unhealthy or unsanitary, and here is what I'd like you to do to stop that behavior. When we talk about issues from the I, right, we have to think about how we're feeling. I was joking with some family members and friends of mine that Jamaicans only have two emotions, anger and happy. So it's either we're really, really angry or we're really, really hungry, but we oftentimes lean more to anger, right? So I wanted to provide a list of all the words, of as many words as possible. Obviously, this list is not exhaustive, but words that we can use to demonstrate how we might be feeling, which could be along the anger spectrum, confusion, strength, happiness, and sad, in order to really express ourselves. And to share with you how I statements, right, and the use of I statements can really help us, one, to stop, as the song says, and think, and to get ourselves into a calm place so that we can tell the person exactly how we're feeling using language that is not defamatory or inflammatory. So right here it says, when you're using I statements to share how you're feeling about an issue or about an issue that might have caused you harm, you tell the person how you feel, right? Yes, we have to talk about feelings. I know that is also not a Jamaican norm, but we have to really share our feelings so that people know that this emotion is actually causing us something internal. Tell the person what they did, but not in a way that's like accusatory or meant to cause further harm. Just tell them what they did to make you feel that way. And then tell the person why you feel the way that you feel, and then tell the person what you would want them to do going forward. So in this example that is shared, I feel mad when you call me nicknames because I asked you not to. Please do not call me nicknames. You can insert, right, as many feeling words in there, as many issues in there, as many reasons why you feel this way there, and also like further action steps. This is sort of like the blueprint that was developed by, and because conflict resolution borrows a lot from psychology, that was developed by psychologists to help people express their emotions when they're in high states of emotions. And it just allows the persons to pause, to stop, to think, to be calm, and to really process what they're saying. A lot of times in arguments or in issues or in conflict, we're so worked up, right? That we just, the thought of stopping and being calm just is probably not on our minds. But you would be amazed at at what we can achieve if we're in heightened conflict situations and emotions are high, and we just pause and calmly figure out what we're going to say, right, using our I statements. So that is how best to use I statements to say what it is that we are feeling regarding the harm or the situation that has probably caused us harm. So now, if you're the person on the receiving end, the next skill, so that was skill number 1, which is using I statements. Skill number 2 is active listening. So I'm going to put it out there, people tend to not know how to listen effectively. In a conflictual situation or in a situation where tensions are high, people are oftentimes listening to argue, listen to give a next jab, listen to rebut, listen to like refute, or listen to give more evidence against what you're saying that it's wrong, right? People are usually listening actively for understanding. So the skill that I'm offering to you today is active listening, which is the skill of listening for understanding, which is very different from listening to respond, right? So active listening is a set of techniques designed to help you hear and understand what someone else is saying, and to help the speaker express themselves clearly. Active listening focuses on both facts and feelings, and it reduces tensions and defensiveness and allows conflicts to be resolved more effectively. Why? Because you, the person who is sharing how you're feeling, is using I statements, right? And saying, here is how I feel. Here is how this action has impacted me internally. And the person who is on the receiving end is listening because they're trying to understand how the harm was caused and how is that making you feel, and would like to, in some place, move towards a resolution. So active listening, the skill encourages people to continue talking, right? And to really show interest that, yes, what you have to say to me is valid. I'm listening, I'm tuned in. I'm not just listening to respond, I'm listening for understanding and listening so that we can find common ground. Active listening helps us to question, right, to gather more information about what is being shared. It helps us to restate or reframe, which is another skill that we're going to talk about, by saying to the person, here is what I hear you're saying, and here is me showing that I've heard what you have said. I'm not just listening to, respond and put my own thoughts in. It allows the listener to reflect on what the speaker is saying, especially from some of the emotional things that they're sharing, and allows you to summarize and to pull together all the important issues to let the speaker know that you have heard, right? And I know this is one thing that people don't realize or has never practiced, which is when you listen effectively, you should always validate what the person is saying so that they know that you were actually listening, right? Validate it so that they know that you recognize what they're sharing, that you recognize their perspectives and recognize their feelings. So that is what active listening is about, really listening deeply so that you can hear what the person is saying, so that you can restate it and summarize it to the person to show that you are actually listening or understanding, not listening to respond. So what does that look like in retrospect? Here is a cute little video that I will share with you all about active listening.
So let's talk about listening.
That's easy.
We all think we're good listeners, but have you ever done this? Or this? Or this?
Oh dear, I have.
Well, sadly, we all have.
Oh well, if everyone does it, then it can't be that big a deal.
Actually, it is. When we don't listen, we're saying, yeah, what you're saying isn't important.
Oh dear. So, what should I do?
Well, be present and focus when your friend is talking. We call this active listening.
That sounds hard.
Well, the more you do it, the better you become. A great way to practice active listening is to stop.
Like at a stop street.
Not that kind of stop. It stands for stop, breathe, listen, respond. So first you stop what you're doing. And yes, you guessed it. Then you breathe. Now you're ready to listen and
What if I
without interrupting. And we don't just listen with our ears. We listen with our whole body.
My body talks?
You betcha. Look at Jim over here. What do you think his body is communicating to his friend?
He's bored for sure. So how can I not be like Jim?
Well, make sure your eyes are looking straight at the person talking. Your feet are still on the floor. Your mouth is quiet. No talking or making weird sounds.
What's next?
Now you're ready to respond in a kind and patient way. Find out more about the situation, but don't try to solve everything.
But if I can't solve the problem, what can I say?
So say something to encourage them, like, tell me more, or how did that make you feel? Or even, what can I do to help?
So, to be an active listener, I need to stop, breathe, listen, and only then respond?
A+.
Crushed it!
All right, so the video was kind of simplistic to say like stop, breathe, listen, but it really culminates in how to actively listen, right? Which is to focus on the speaker, to avoid any distractions by affirming, either by nodding or showing that you are actively listening. At the end, when the person has finished, shared, to paraphrase or to reframe what it is that they have said so that they have to acknowledge that you have heard them. If at the end you still have some questions to ask, clarifying open-ended questions for clarity and for explanation, not necessarily to further escalate any conflict, but just to ask questions for your own self to help you in your understanding, and to often always avoid interrupting the person when they're speaking. And I know that this is this is a hard skill, right? Because when someone is sharing something with us, it is our tendency to be like, oh, no, I'm gonna tell you this, I'm gonna tell you that part here. Oh, yeah, man, something like that happened to me too, man. Oh, I'm gonna tell you about myself, right? That is not active listening. Active listening is actually giving the person time to hear, right? For you to hear and for the person to share. And yes, you might say, but there's some people might go on and on and on and on. And at what point, am I going to reframe everything? When that is very true. So one of the things is that the skill of communicating in conflict resolution is for you as the speaker to recognize that in sharing your story, that the person needs to reframe it. So you give it in smaller snippets so that the person can hear and understand and reframe and reflect, and then continue on with the story. And recognizing there's a thing that we call sharing the airtime so that there is active communication back and forth. All right, so with that said, those are two of the skills that we're going to practice right now. The first one that we're just going to do is going to be active listening. So you're going to actively listen. And that means that I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Now, if you have never gone into a breakout room before on Zoom, listen to me very carefully. If you are in a household where there is more than one of you, right? Because you're going to break you out into random groups of 2 people. So 2 people are going to go off into breakout rooms, and you're going to do this what's on the screen that I'll read to you. If you're in a household and you're watching this as a household, and you're in a household of 4 people, right? One person is going to engage with the person on screen, and that person, and they're going to be practicing. The 3 people who are at home, you're going to practice with each other, taking time and turns to actively listen and to share. If you're in a household of 3 people, one person is going to be engaging with the person on screen. The 2 people who are left are going to practice with each other. Does that make sense? All right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to break you out into breakout rooms randomly. And here is what you're going to do. You're going to get 2 minutes. I'll be keeping time. I will shout over the Zoom intercom to tell you that it's time to switch. But each person is going to get 2 minutes of uninterrupted time to introduce themselves to the listener. Listener, you're not interrupting, you're not asking questions. If the person mentioned that them come from Grove and you have family from Grove, you're not going to be like, yo, Miss Matty from Grove. No, you're just listening, right? You're listening for 2 minutes uninterrupted, and the person is sharing for 2 minutes uninterrupted about who they are. People, as you share, you can share as much as you want, right? This is supposed to be low stakes, like really low stakes. So this is your 2 minute pitch about yourself to somebody else. And it's rare when you get 2 minutes to talk about yourself. So we're going to do that. Right. When you're finished, we will close out the breakout rooms and everybody will come back, and then we'll do a little debriefing. So get ready. I'm going to drop the instructions in the chat as well. But I want you all to know that that's what you're doing. For 2 minutes, your first person is going to share, and I'm going to yell switch over the intercom, and then you switch, and then we'll end the breakout rooms and come back and do some debriefing.
Christoph?
Yes.
Yeah, there might be some persons who might not be familiar with the breakout room. So in terms of how to leave the breakout room or to get in, maybe you could probably just explain that a bit more.
Sure. Even perfect. So I'm going to assign you randomly. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do it automatically. So it's going to like suck people out, right? And you will just go. In the event that you don't go into the rooms automatically, we're going to be on the back end putting you into groups, right? At the end of the sharing process, which is about 5 minutes, I will close the breakout rooms, and then that's going to bring everybody back into the room. So it's all automatic in the Zoom fair. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So there is, how many people? 40 people. Right, there's 40 people. Oh, people are signing off. So if you're gonna sign off as we do practice, if you're gonna sign off as we practice, all right. So you should have gotten right? See, I already see people getting sucked into the room. I like to see like you're getting sucked in. All right. So if people left and went to the bathroom or somewhere, but you should have gotten the invitation to go out. All right, we have Crosdale who is by themselves. So I'm gonna move. Crosdale, I'm gonna move you to room 12. All right, hosts, you co-host, you can, what I'm gonna ask you to do is to just jump around. Can we pause the record for conflict resolution coach? Sometimes people share things and it's so inflammatory and they use inflammatory words. Reframing also helps us to diffuse the situation by removing negative language and just focusing on what we heard is affecting the person, right? It helps us to reevaluate ourselves and also to reevaluate and to evaluate that the person is saying. And it not only helps people to frame their thoughts, right? It also allows us to better understand what they're doing and how they are seeing a conflict or seeing a situation, and really help them to like change their frame or to broaden their scope of how they're thinking about a conflict. So steps in reframing are one, you restate what you heard, right? The next step is to summarize the person's experience, how they are saying that it happened. And the important part is you're validating their feelings, because oftentimes people feel like they're not being heard and that their feelings aren't being validated. You reflect on their commitment or their objective, what it is that they need, right, in this situation, and then you ask, did I get that correctly? So in this case, and I'll bring up again the thing that I brought up earlier about my family member who really doesn't like when we and spit anywhere. In the reframe, like if they're sharing with me, I get really, and I feel really annoyed when you spit because it's not hygienic, and I would like you to stop doing that inside the house or in the presence so that we don't spread germs around. In reframing, what that would look like from my end is, I would say, what I hear you saying is, when I spit, right, that is unsanitary and you feel annoyed by it sometimes. And as such, you'd like me to stop that behavior so that we don't continue to spread germs and make it unsanitary. Am I hearing you correctly? So that is the reframe, right? You're listening actively for what the person is saying. You're restating what the person said, bringing in all the feels and what they're saying, and validate, right, that piece, and then asking if that was correct. Usually the person is there, the person would be like, yes, that is perfect. Now go stop your behavior and let's carry on. In a perfect world, that is what it would be like. But, for practice purposes, that's just how we're going to do. So in summarizing, right, or talk today, when it comes to how we operate in a conflict, the slide is called Fighting Fair, but I don't really like to use negative language, so I'm just going to say how to resolve conflicts, right? This little snippet is just going to give us some tools, like just wrap up everything regarding active listening, sharing how we feel, and reframing.
But everyone's going tonight. I don't understand why I have to stay and babysit. It's not fair! It's not fair! It's not fair! Oh, it's not fair. Throughout our life, we may experience conflict with friends, family members, and even romantic partners. Conflict is when people disagree on an issue or can't get along well. Sometimes those conflicts go too far. Nasty personal remarks about the other person may be said. One or both people in the argument raises their voices in anger. Sometimes there's even physical violence. If you want to avoid getting to such extremes, it's important to have conflict resolution skills. Here's how it works. Conflict resolution is something that you need to practice, and it requires the effort of everyone involved in the conflict. Determine what the disagreement is actually about. Explain how you feel and how the conflict is affecting you. Listen openly to what the other person feels and needs, and try to understand their point of view. Brainstorm solutions that will make both people happy, or find a compromise that both people can live with and agree on what each of you will do. Stick to what has been decided. And if the solution is not working, start the process over. The more you practice conflict resolution, the better you'll become at it. Having the skill to resolve conflicts is a sign that you're growing up. It's not. But everyone's going tonight. I don't understand.
All right, having the skill to resolve conflict shows that you're growing up. So given that this is Family Month and we're talking about building resilient families, those three skills of actively listening, sharing using I statements, and reframing what we have heard is actually really good tools to have in your toolkit. Right? Because as it allows us to stop, to think, to reflect, to actually hear, digest, understand, and then reframe, restate, and to ensure that we ask the person if we heard them correctly so that they feel heard, they feel validated, and we can continue, right, having these dialogues and such. So we're going to do a longer modeling this time. And this, I copied it in the chat before, but it seemed like it didn't go over. So I'm going to, if you're on a computer, if you could take a picture of this, if you're going into your groups again, or just wait for a little bit until I paste it in the chat, but I'll read it out for you and you're going to do this modeling. So we're going to go in and for a little longer this time, you're going to practice this skill, one of sharing using I statements and two of reframing using active listening skills. So here's the scenario. Family member one, you hate seeing dirty dishes being left in the sink overnight. So before you go to bed, you ensure that someone washes up and there is an empty sink. You're often the first person to wake up in the mornings and you always see some type of dish in the sink. You know for a fact that this is a particular family member as you have heard them in the kitchen late at night and you want to confront them about it. So you're going to use I statements to share with your family member your concern using one or more of the emotions that I showed you before or any that you have on hand. And you're going to state, and this is what the model is. I know it's kind of quirky, but you know, it's a skill and it's skill building. And the more and more you practice it, it becomes natural. You're going to say, I feel some type of way when you don't do the dishes, when you leave dirty dishes in the sink, because it means that I have to wake up in the morning and do them. Please do your dishes after, or however you want to phrase that. That is just my phrasing, but you're all much more capable to do this. So start thinking about how you're going to practice that. Family member two, in your house, you eat dinner really, really early at night and you get really hungry and you go and make yourself a snack. You know a particular family member hates dirty dishes being left in the sink overnight, but you do not like washing dishes. That's me. You realize that the first time you left the dishes in the sink, your family member gets up and washes them anyway. So you figured, what's the big deal? They're going to wash them anyway, so why bother? So when the person confronts you about your dirty dishes, right? Here you are going to use your active listening skills to reframe what they are saying, right? So what your family member is saying, and you're going to use those techniques using this model. What I heard you say is that when I do X, it makes you feel. I hear that this is important to you. and you would like me to do this. Did I hear you correctly? So the key to this is you're actually listening to what the person is saying and you're inserting what they're saying in there. And this is just a practicing just to make it, you know, become a little easier for you or to get the skill, right? So when in this model, you're going to say, when the person shares with you, you're going to say, what I hear you say is you do not like when I leave dishes in the sink. When I do that, when I leave the dishes in the sink, it makes you feel angry or annoyed. I hear that having a clean sink at night is important to you, and you would like me to do my dishes after I make my snack at night. Did I hear you correctly? All right, so you're gonna have 5 minutes to practice, right? And you're gonna take turns being the family member. So if you're family member one, when you go through it one time, then you're gonna switch and then you're gonna be family. So you're switching the roles just to get a feel for it, all right? So take a picture of this, take a screenshot. I'm also going to drop it in the chat. I would suggest that if you have an extra phone, just take a picture of it because it might not drop in the chat by the time you go off into your group. So you just don't want to be staring at each other, wondering, what are we doing, right? So take a picture of it. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to take a picture of it. And I'm also going to drop it in the chat for folks as well. So while I set up the breakout rooms, while I set up the breakout rooms, you're going to head off. Some people signed off, so I'm going to reduce the rooms. Actively to reframe using the prescribed models. No, I'm not saying that that's how you should respond. I'm just saying that is like a framework that has been developed by organizational psychologists and conflict resolution practitioners as a model, just in case, because people are always like, well, how do I do it? Well, they just give you language, but you can make it your own, right? You can put your own flair to it, your own personality to it, just as long as you're remembering that when you're reframing and sharing, that you're at least affirming what the person is saying, that you are saying what you heard, and bringing in all the emotions that they're feeling as well, that you're hearing what is it that they're asking of you, and that you're confirming with them that you have heard correctly. In that way, they can say, no, that's not what I said. You didn't hear this part, or yes, what you said was accurate, and hopefully going forward. As I was going from group to group, I heard some folks making it their own, which was great, and talking about like, all right, this is what I hear you say you want me to do, or whatever, in our own little Jamaican flair, and I really like that as well. So, you know, the model is there for you to use as a tool, but it doesn't mean you have to use it prescriptively or word for word. It's just a way for you to really share. Cool. So I'm going to take, in the interest of time, three people to tell me how that little modeling and practice went for you, and jump in at any point, because I can't see everybody. So just open your mics and jump in and tell us how this modeling felt for you. So I'm guessing it felt good for everybody and everybody got it. And all right, cool. I do this with my class, like I do a count and then I move on. All right, so conflict resolution, right, is a necessary skill that we all should have, but it is necessary most of the time, not all the time, right? So I know people will be like, well, this is good to know, but you know, there's some times when this skill is not going to work for me. And you are right. Say you're driving in traffic and a taxi person cuts you off, right? And sticks their body out of the car and like responds using some colorful language. it's probably not best for you to be like, so what I'm hearing you saying is you don't like my driving and you would like me to like stop so you can pass. No, right? Like you don't, you're not gonna be asked to use the skills then. The skill that you should use right there is just pray that your car and you are okay, and pray for the driver and let them go on. So the skills that you just saw are to be used in times when you would like to, one, preserve the relationship and existing relationship that's already there. And given that this is family month and we're talking about building resilient families, in case an issue comes up at home, within your family, within your friend group, within your church groups, and you want to continue to have an amicable relationship with the people around you. This is when conflict resolution skills are necessary, right? And when you should use them. If it is in a case where the person is just a fly by the night and like the person just says what they're saying and gone, right? There's no way, you can't run them down and be like, come, let's be in resolution together. You just harm me. Obviously, that's not going to work. So knowing when to deploy these skills is essential. And it's usually typically in times or when the relationship that you are having or with the person is one that you want to continue from a place of harmony. So it is not always useful to use I statements. And I'm going to say, I'll give you the good and the bad. And also when you're reframing, it might sound very prescriptive and people might not think you're being genuine, right? And that has happened to me before. I was reframing and saying to a person, I hear what you're saying, and I recognize that your feelings are valid. And the person said to me, stop, Crystal, stop with the psychoanalyzing, stop. I cannot. And was like, I can't talk with you right now, and walked away, right? And that's when sometimes reframing doesn't work because the person doesn't want you to be engaging with them in that way, right? You have to assess whether you deploying these skills are appropriate, right? In a particular time, especially if at a time of heightened emotion, if someone is crying, right? And you are saying, I see that you're crying. Tell me more about, right? Probably not the best. So you have to like use emotional intelligence whenever to deploy these skills, because there's a right time and probably not such a good time. All right. And oftentimes assess the situation and recognize, especially in conflict resolutions, someone's privacy is paramount. So if you hear something, don't share it, right? And always remember the person's humanity. So before I said to you that you all will have the opportunity to take the conflict strategy test, here is the link. Deacon Bart is going to drop it in the chat for you right now. So please click on the link after this presentation at a later date or whatever. Take the quiz and see what you got, right? Talk with your family members. Have everybody in the family take it and then share with each other as like family time, what each of you got, what that means, and how you will operate as a unit depending on how each of you have approached conflict. I said I've done this with members of my family, and it was very eye-opening to see what some of us got. So I encourage you to take this quiz and to use it as an opportunity during Family Month to talk about how you all approach conflict. So with that, we are to the end of my presentation, and I'm very thankful that the Family Life Committee invited me to come and for me to show this particular part of my life that I'm very passionate about, which is conflict resolution. And hopefully this is just the beginning of many more such workshops. So thank you all for having me.
In the interest of time, thank you, Sister O'Neill. In the interest of time, we'll take 2 questions. We have nightcap coming up shortly, so we just need to ensure that we stick to a time that will give us enough time for people to switch over to nightcap. We'll take 2 questions. All right, I'm assured that we got a lot from this seminar. It was well delivered, full of information, very interactive. So I want to say a special thank you to Sister O'Neill on a very, very interactive presentation on conflict resolution techniques. We got to know about our I statements, to practice active listening, and also reframing. And listening to some of the discourse that were going on, I'm telling you, the reframing part of it was awesome. I mean, it diffused any tension that may have arrived during the conflict. But thank you very much, Sister O'Neill. Thank you, Deacon Michelle Grant, for introducing our speaker, and all members of the Family Life Ministry team. Thank you for putting this seminar together. Technical support by Deacon Barrett, we thank you very much for that. And to all of you who joined us tonight, we thank you for being a part of this presentation. Now, as we close off, we just want to close off with a benediction. The Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Now, tonight and forevermore. Thank you, Sister Neil. Wonderful presentation.